Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Legal Tech Week. It is December 16th, 2022. We weren't here the last week, so glad to be back this week. I'm Bob Ambrogi. I am the moderator here, the author of the blog Law Sites, and the host of the podcast Law Next. And we got a pretty full house here today, which is a good thing. We haven't had that for a while. So let's go around and say hello. And Victor, why don't you kick it off?
Oh, hi everyone. My name is Victor Lee. I'm assistant managing editor with the ABA Journal, covering the business of law and technology. And happy early holidays to everybody. Hope everyone has a good one.
Thank you. And Jean?
I'm Gina Grady. I am the author and editor of Dewey Be Strategic, and I also write a column for Legal Tech Hub.
And okay, and Stephanie?
Hi, I'm Stephanie Wilkins. I'm the editor-in-chief of Legal Tech News at ALM.
All right. Niki, how about you?
I am Niki Black. I am the SME and external education lead at MyCase.
I love that you still have to look up your title. It's like
Yeah, because I have to think about it. And I also write legal tech columns for ABA Journal, blah, 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 Daily Record, and elsewhere. And happy to be here.
and the in the S&M lead at Above the Law.
That perfect. Yes, that is actually exactly right. Joe Patrice from Above the Law. I am the a senior editor there. I'm at also at Thinking Like a Lawyer podcast. Good to have everyone back. See everyone for the first time in a while.
Yeah. And last but not least, Steve.
Hey, happy holidays, everyone. Stephen Embry. I write the blog Tech Law Crossroads.
All right. All right. Well, okay. So we've got a bunch of stuff to talk about today, but I actually wanted to raise something that wasn't on the list, but ask a couple of you, because I was just trying to tweet this out earlier, and it looked to me like a few of your Twitter accounts have disappeared. Am I making that up or not? Victor, I'm looking at you for one. Did you get off of Twitter?
Yeah, I tweeted out Elon Musk's private address, and that somehow got me banned. I don't know why. No, I decided to get off it. I've been thinking about it for a while, just because I feel like there's so many. I feel like social media takes up too much of my time to begin with, and I've been thinking about kind of moving off it for a while, but it just I don't know. I just decided that just to take the plunge, and I think some people that I knew were getting off it as well, and so I thought, okay, you know what, maybe I'll just jump before the ship sinks. And this was right when a bunch of people got laid off / were fired. So I didn't even know if Twitter was going to make it past the weekend. Although obviously, it's still going on, everything like that. I'm not going to raise any kind of red flags there. But yeah, I decided, I'm just going to back up all my data. Request the request that did the download link for my profile and stuff, and then I just decided just to cut the cord.
So was this a move of not having the bandwidth, or a move of principle on your part?
A little of both. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't like the surge in hate language that accompanied the takeover. Like, I guess we're in the immediate aftermath of takeover. I didn't like seeing that, and I didn't like just sort of the cavalier attitude towards a lot of things that I take seriously, like COVID misinformation and things like that. And so I just decided, I think, and plus, yeah, I mean, I do kind of think that it's never really a medium that I've had a lot of tolerance for to begin with. Like I probably use Twitter, the least out of, compared to like other things. So I thought, what, it was probably as good of a time as any to just let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd almost put into the articles for this week what happened late last night, when several prominent journalists were banned from Twitter for daring to criticize or say something not appropriate about Mr. Musk, and which, you know, I mean, it's his company. He can do whatever he wants, but can being able to do something and should do something is completely different. And I just, you know, it is a bit of a principle that here we have somebody that's, you know, you dare to criticize them and they ban you. And I mean, you know, I'm worried if I say anything that, you know, I have a Tesla and I'm worried that he'll cut off my heated seats or something. I mean,
Yeah.
banning me
I
from Twitter doesn't do much good, but cutting off my heated seats might really be an impact.
I read something
Another
later
principle
today
building.
that it was about people disclosing his location information, and it was an invasion of privacy issue.
So there's
That's the spin.
yeah, there's a lot going on there. So there is he has a private plane, and as per all private planes, they can be tracked by the FAA because that's publicly available information. There was a bot who tracks people's private planes. It just like tracks all rich people's private planes doing that. He objected to that bot doing that, and then he banned the person. He banned that bot and banned the person who ran that account. However, what then happened is he started banning newspaper outlets who were just pointing out, hey, he banned the person who had put up this bot, who had not done anything about his location, but just said, this seems like he's a crazy person for banning people for posting public information. And then he banned all those people. And then I signed up for Mastodon. So, I mean, I'm still on Twitter because I enjoy watching him meltdown in real time. But I did get a Mastodon account to, you know, to cover my bets.
Yeah. And Stephanie, did you cancel yours too? I couldn't find you
I
on
honestly
Twitter.
was almost never on Twitter. I literally only joined it in September just to watch
Oh.
the world start to burn. So
Oh.
I'm essentially not on it anyway. I avoided it forever. So
All right. Yeah. So what's Mastodon been like, Joe?
I'm Joe Patrice at, I think it's at social, but you can search just Joe Patrice and I'll come up wherever you all are.
What are your impressions of it though?
I mean, it's obviously slow because not a ton of people are on it yet. It is slightly longer posts. It's clunky. Like I'm one of those people who Twitter didn't really make much sense to me until I got TweetDeck, which I think is the killer app that makes Twitter make sense. Until there's something like that for Mastodon, it's never going to be perfect for me. But whatever.
I haven't done that yet. I'm on Post. Just got on Post last night, and it's kind of a lonely place there right now.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Well, moving on to other topics. Yeah, I was gonna just rub your noses in the fact that I got to go to a legal tech conference that none of you guys got to go to, and I'm actually not entirely sure why I was the only one invited, but I know in part the idea it was the legal tech, the TLTF summit for the Legal Tech Fund. It was the first time they had done a conference. It was a capped attendance at 250 people. And I was, for some reason, the only media person there. The reason I was told was
That's
really
for
that
the
it
fifth
was
time.
that it for the fifth time. In case did I mention that I was the only media person invited? But they had said it was off the record, and they wanted it to be kind of an open and frank discussion, and a lot of people, a lot of like VCs there and that type of stuff. But the funny thing is, it wasn't really off the record. I mean, the people were tweeting. Not a lot of people were tweeting actually, but people were tweeting, and there was no limit on people tweeting there. And they actually were posting. A lot of others were actually posting on Facebook. I mean, on LinkedIn, which is almost kind of odd to me that they were trying to like replicate Twitter on LinkedIn in a sense, which I don't think went over all that well. But yeah, next year I suspect they're going to open it up and probably to a few more media people as well. And I would encourage people to think about it. It was just, what was interesting about it was that it wasn't just the usual suspects. It made me realize how much, how many of the legal tech conferences I go to, you just keep seeing kind of the same people over and over again. I think we all know that. Obviously, there are variations. I mean, ABA Tech Show attracts a different crowd than Legal Week New York or ILTA. But this was a interesting mix of a bunch of investors, a lot of, a good number of investors who were there, and really early stage startups, more established startups. I think I see Kristen Sunday's in the audience, and she was there. And then, sort of more industry veterans. I mean, CEOs of companies, other people who've just been around for a long time. And there was just this real unique kind of energy around it. I mean, it reminded me of kind of the early Clio cons, or some of the other people were analogizing it to like the First Clock conference, or one of the First Clock conferences. So whether they can replicate all of that again next year, I don't know. Whether the energy will wane a little bit. I no doubt they're going to increase the size of it next year. Hopefully not too much. I think it was a really nice size for a conference. But yeah, it was a good experience, and I think some good, just a lot of good conversations, a lot of energy, a lot of constant hallway conversations, or whatever. People just constantly talking, and it was in Miami, so what's not to like about that? So, did I mention I was the only journalist invited?
You did. You did mention.
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
No, it did.
Yeah,
come
I would have
across.
started. I would have started off with that, Bob. Actually, I'm surprised you didn't.
And mentioned it 5 times after that.
So,
Okay.
so Bob, were you the only legal journalist at this conference?
Did money exchange hands? That's what I want
No
to know.
money.
No,
I
no,
wish
no.
money had changed
No, I didn't mean
hands.
for you. I mean, did anybody get money? Any startups get money? Were people going into, private rooms and cutting deals?
So that's an interesting question, actually. I mean, not publicly or not visibly, but I know that there were lots of side meetings going on, and I know a lot of the startups that were there that I talked to were talking about there was a pitch competition. They said it was like a half day Wednesday, full day Thursday, half day Friday, or something, whatever days it was, and so there was a sort of an ongoing. Startups had competed in a preliminary competition to get in and be able to pitch at this thing, and they kind of had a running series of pitches going on all through the conference, which one thing I didn't entirely like, because I was you had to choose between going to the really substantive panels and going to some of these pitches. You couldn't do both at once, obviously, but I don't think the winner actually got anything other than the honor of sort of winning in front of all these VCs who were there. But I know I talked to some investors and also some founders who were there, who were certainly having side conversations. So whether that turned into anything, I don't know. But
Were there any non-contract drafting startups?
yeah, no, there were. You can actually go to, I think they still have it posted. If you go to tltfsummit.com, I think it is, I think there's a list of all the startups. There were a number of consumer-facing startups. There were some sort of justice tech type startups. The overall feel of the conference was sort of big firm-ish and corporate, but the startups were really quite a cross section of different types of companies. Several that a good number of which I had never heard of, and several from outside the U.S. A couple of people there from South America with doing some interesting stuff. There was a guy there from Egypt who I mean, I don't know that I've ever talked to a legal tech startup from Egypt ever before, and so that was interesting to see. So it was quite a mix.
And yes, you were the only legal tech journalist there, right?
I mean, I was. How did you know that?
Just
Like
wanted to be
none of
sure.
us have anything to add right now. It's like silence. We're like,
Right. Great conference.
That's the only. It's like it would have been a little more fun to have some of you guys there to hang out with, but
Yeah,
Niki's
right.
boss was there.
Throw us a bone, Bob.
That's her and our head of product. right?
The Affinipay LawPay crew
Mhm.
were there. Drew spoke as one of the speakers, so that's good. All right. Well, moving on to a topic that few journalists and also that few journalists have covered. I was thinking maybe ChatGPT, because nobody's really been talking about that much. But Stephanie, you had a really good article on it this week, and Jean, you picked up a really good, interesting article on it this week. A couple of different variations
Oh,
on it.
no. Yeah.
Who knew? Right. Yeah, Stephanie, I thought your piece was really good. But you want to try and summarize it a little bit, talk about what you wrote about this week?
Yeah, I mean, I've been obsessed with ChatGPT and gone down the rabbit hole. I know Niki has too. I actually talked to her for my article because I knew over LinkedIn that we were both obsessed about it. But yeah, it's just, I mean, it's a chatbot essentially, but it's different. It's like we've moved on from GPT-3 technology to GPT 3.5, they're calling it, and you can just feel the difference. Like we were saying, it's hard to put your finger on, but it feels sentient in a way that other ones haven't, and understands tone. You can write in almost any prompt and it can generate text in, as a legal contract, as a Bible verse, as a song. It understands nuance and background in ways other technology hasn't. So, I mean, my big question was, can and should it be used in legal? And if so, in what capacity? And where it kind of is shaken out now is that it has great potential, especially for, drafting things like letters. I even put in there, write an NDA for Stephanie Wilkins, which, wasn't a final usable form, but it was a really good start. But then, of course, it comes, I mean, a lot of questions come. I mean, you still have to have the humans in it. Kind of the thing that came up on our panel at Relativity Fest too, of, the whole idea of unauthorized practice of law, like can tech tools practice law? It just raised, I feel like I'm all over the board because it was a long article. I just went in so many different places, but some companies are using it, like Do Not Pay is already using it in a couple capacities. And I spoke to a IP lawyer who represents a lot of the generative AI companies, and like we just nerded out for half an hour. We could have gone so much longer on it, and he's like, people think this is cool, you have no idea what's coming.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of an interesting point out of his article, was that that question of this is just the beginning. We've got who knows where this is going to lead, but
well, and the idea that for now it's not, I mean, it's too general, but people are expecting it will be eventually licensed, like specific products for a firm. So, SCADN, for example, could train it on all internal SCADN documents and get sort of the industrial knowledge that way. But also, I mean, legal briefs kind of look the same, but they don't. You can kind of tell a SCADN brief versus another firm's brief in a way. And that would be the same thing where, like Niki and I were talking about it replacing bloggers and things. And like right now, it could generate a post, and you would probably be able to tell that Niki didn't write it or I didn't write it. But if you trained it on everything I've ever written, it'll eventually, be able to mimic my own voice a lot more. It is all about training the models, but the potential is amazing. And that was sort of what that lawyer was saying, is that everyone's amazed now, but this is like just the tip of the iceberg.
Well, what really interested me was when I was playing around with it, I went into the same query. You could, reload the query and see what happened. And it didn't spit out the exact same thing every time. It was similar, but it really provided some additional nuance each time. So I thought that was also really interesting, that it doesn't just iterate, that, doesn't do the exact same thing over. It reassesses and sort of comes up with a new response. And so, and sometimes if you combine the multiple responses together, you've got something that's even better than the first one that you started with. It gives you a really good foundation for whatever fairly simple thing you were trying to do, right? I don't think you can do too many super complex, create too many super complex documents with that as a starting point, but for the more simpler ones, I think you really can. Especially for a solo who's just starting out, who doesn't have the templates and would have to reach out to someone else to get them. It's a good starting point in that type of situation, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, it does, the way it understands the sentient feeling. Like someone sent me an example of it tried to write a comedy sketch. They had Jerry Seinfeld actually read it out loud. Write a comedy skit about going on a date with Elon Musk off a dating app. And like it wasn't great comedy, but it understood like what a dating app was, who he was, because he's like, oh, you show up to the date and he's like, oh, we're going to Mars. And you say, oh, I'm not dressed for Mars. And it was like, it understood like those like weird little like social clues too. That doesn't seem like, I don't know what it's been trained on to know all of that and combine it all in one little routine. It's just really impressive.
Yeah. You mentioned the Harvey, which announced recently that it had raised $5 million from OpenAI, and I got a chance to play around with a little bit, which I'm not supposed to talk about yet. I think I'm the only journalist who got a chance to play around with the Harvey, but there's like a theme evolving here.
I used to really like you, Bob.
I still like you. No, but so they haven't quite come out of stealth yet. They've announced their funding. They haven't quite come out of their stealth yet. And actually, Andrew Arruda, who's on the call, I think helped me get an introduction to them. But I did get a chance to play around with a sort of a very early version of what they're doing, which is going to be a platform for law. And I was really amazed. I mean, and as I say, it's an early version. They're funded by OpenAI, so they're using that technology and have the support of that company directly. But sort of like yours, Stephanie. I mean, I just had a lot of fun just playing. It's just fun to play with and do different things with and it's the potential, I think, for I think the founders of that company would say they don't see this as being replacing lawyers, but as being
Just first-year associates.
just first, or maybe replacing first year associates. But I mean,
Maybe we can actually let first-year associates do more interesting stuff.
Yeah. But giving you that head start, on and across a variety of use cases. That's what's interesting. It's not just for drafting, or not just for legal research, or not just for this or that or whatever. The applications really kind of span a bunch of areas. So
yeah, and I saw that someone just put the link in the chat. Like I said, with like Do Not Pay, they're definitely using it to help people negotiate down traffic tickets. They've done a live sample of it negotiating a Comcast bill. So
yeah,
they're actively using it. Yeah,
that was the story you had, Gene, it highlighted this week. Gene, you want to talk about that a little bit, or you're muted?
Not much to add, except I thought it was interesting that Do Not Pay was trying to expand into generic consumer, empowerment. And I although the one glitch I see is that it talked about how corporations have all these bots out there talking to consumers, but it's so easy to hit a dead end in talking to a bot. So I don't know how these chatbots are going to overcome the structure of like the other party has to be willing to participate, because I just hit too many walls talking to bots, like customer service bots, where it doesn't answer the question that I want to ask and I can't get past it. So, I hope I guess the big question is it intelligent enough to figure out how to get a human being on the phone?
Yeah.
That would be worth a lot of money.
Yes.
Right.
But it is, it's kind of fitting that Do Not Pay is, they branded themselves, the world's first robot lawyer, right? So, this is completely up their alley. So, it's fun to see what they're doing with it for sure.
But it would also be really exciting to see if this could be applied to things like rent disputes, things that poor people never have access to,
right?
Getting resolved. That would be a really, I think, in some ways, the most exciting application.
Yeah, I thought there was an interesting comment from Kate in the chat about using it in legal marketing, which is not something I really thought much about. But it is interesting to see how people are talking about it as a, draft your blog post for you, draft news stories for you. Pretty soon, none of us journalists will be invited to these events. They'll just be inviting ChatGPT, and it'll just sit there and churn out a report of what's happening.
That's so distasteful to me, though, because the internet is already just a cesspool of SEO laden crap.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah,
know,
I was just gonna say it's.
Are you talking about my
perfect
blog again?
but like you try to find a recipe and you end up on some stupid site about someone talking about their grandma, and for like 10 minutes you're trying to get to the actual recipe.
No, you can't find a recipe without a grandma story. You can't.
Wait, now I will say that used to be true, but I feel like almost all the recipe websites now have a button close to the top that is jump to recipe. That is their new thing. So I would consider that.
It's anything that you try to research, you have to actually put in like Reddit or Quora or like a site after it in order to actually get good results these days, because otherwise you just end up on these pages that are, what is, you have a complex question. Yeah, I don't know, like, how do I tie my shoes? What is a shoelace? What is a shoe? Why would you want to tie your shoes? Here's what a shoelace looks like. And by the time you get to how to tie your shoelace,
Shoelaces were first invented in the
Are you in the market for shoes? Here's several options.
Better yet, here are some shoes that don't have shoelaces. You might be interested in.
with like Amazon links in
even
them.
maybe worse.
Yeah.
Greg Lambert is using it for his podcast. I thought his voice was sounding a little more robotic lately, but I don't know if that was just.
Well, I think that's next. That's what I've been told is next. So we had the art, we had the AI generated art. Now we have the ChatGPT. We're going to see the AI generated music next, where you can, train it on like Bob Dylan's entire catalog and have it create a song in a very close to the style of Bob Dylan. Like that's supposedly what's coming next. So that's going to probably raise a lot of the IP issues that the art did that we aren't seeing as much with the chat so far.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
another interesting development this week was this law.com MyCase survey of the legal industry that came out, which one of our esteemed panelists happened to write and know a thing or two about. So, Niki, why don't you tell us about that? I thought it had some really interesting findings in it.
Sure, and just not that I don't want to give law.com the credit, but it was LawPay in my case.
What did
I was like, we did what? I don't remember doing this.
And
we wrote about it, but no, all
interestingly, I didn't write the survey. I just use an AI chatbot, so my secret's out. No, that's not true. Well, it's really interesting.
One of those law companies. I don't know.
Every year, well, this is my second year, but I try to sort of focus on legal tech concepts that are trending, whether it's industry-wide or just at a technology level. And so this year, one of the things I was really interested in, because we're all talking about legal tech consolidation and funding, was what do legal professionals even know this is happening? And for the ones that do, what do they think about it? So I included a section in there on that, which not surprisingly, about 30% actually even have a clue any of this stuff is going on. And the ones that do, I think it was like 39%, pretty much across the board, thought it would be favorable for lawyers, for clients, and for firms. I think that was the third question, or for the industry, lawyers, the industry, and clients. So, and there's a significant percentage that really didn't know. They just didn't have a good sense of whether it would not be favorable. But I thought that was interesting, because it's just something we all get so excited about, but it's not even filtering down, which makes sense. And then some of the focus was on just the main software that lawyers really do use in their practices. Portion of it was devoted to online payments. And I pulled in some data from our benchmark reports that I wrote this year as well, where we pulled data from MyCase about different functionalities to kind of support, when lawyers are like, yeah, online payments saves me a lot of time. We actually have data that shows that, or that they get paid a lot quicker, or that they could get paid a lot more in a shorter amount of time. So I sort of used a section that focused on that. And then I really wanted to focus on integrations and what do lawyers really want built into their primary operating software, whether it's document management, legal billing, or practice management software, their home base that they're in all the time in their firm. What do they actually want built in, and what do they want integrated into it? And also, what services do they really want to integrate with their primary operating software? And those results were interesting. Let me actually put a copy of the report in case anyone wants to download it. Like some of the results that really stood out to me were that, they really did, lawyers really indicated that the more customization and flexibility that they had, oftentimes that was preferable, just because they have different practices, different practice areas, different makeups of different lawyers that handle different types of practice areas. And so it really helped for them to be able to have that flexibility. And then some statistics in general that really stood out. 84%, so on the payment increase and the rise in the use of online payment processing, 84% accept credit cards, and more than 61% said that they captured more money because of online payment processing software. And the collection rates were 10% higher for people that accepted credit cards compared to those who didn't. And that customers who use credit cards for consultation fees collected 12 million more than those who only accepted cash or check in a 1 year period. And let me see, there was another. Another thing that I focused on that was also interesting, and I'll close with this, is I just wanted to close the loop on the cloud-based remote working trend from the pandemic, and what do things look like as we're sort of heading out of the pandemic. And 73% of the firms said that they were now using cloud software before the pandemic, and that increased to 81% at the time of the survey, meaning that they had were using the cloud at the time of the survey. 81%. 47% added new remote working technologies within the past year, and 46% had added them within the year prior to that due to the pandemic. So you just have every year more and more firms adopting remote working tech within the past year because of the pandemic and the learnings from the pandemic and the changes in perspectives about remote working. And I think what the last thing that really interested me was, I think that lawyers still don't understand that they're using cloud computing when they're using it, because at one point when they were asked the type of cloud tools they'd adopted and they got to choose all that applied, only like 46% said they used online payment processing in the cloud. But then when you ask them what percentage has online payment processing in place, it was like 84%. So I think that lawyers don't always understand when a particular tool is in the cloud. And this kind of harkens back to when I was talking about cloud computing long before it was a thing. And I would ask lawyers in a room, like, how many of you use Dropbox? And like 15 would raise their hands. And then I would say, and how many of you use cloud computing? And like 3 would raise their hands. Like they never know they're using cloud computing. And I think that's still the case, but I do think that the pandemic not only accelerated technology usage, it accelerated the understanding of technology, and more lawyers get the cloud and understand the value of tech more than they ever did before. So that's my summary in a nutshell.
So I thought there were some really interesting things in there. One of the ones that Joe picked up on a little bit, I think, in your write-up on it. Joe, do you want to mention that, or do you?
Yeah, a thing that I noticed, and I thought, everyone's going to cover all of these other issues. I'll be unique and mention this. And then I noticed in almost everybody else's write-up, you all noticed the same thing. So I guess I wasn't all that unique. But one bit that I started noticing is how many of these firms, obviously this is skewing a little bit more towards smaller firms, how many of them are using, the standard retail software for various tasks. Which, we kind of are a unique crowd. We get to hang out with people who are building very custom to lawyer-based solutions all the time that take into account the unique ins and outs of being a lawyer and the needs that we all have. And people just, at least in that segment of the legal industry, seem to not be doing that. Obviously, and you could see where the break was happening. A lot of folks were using billing, was using real lawyer-specific software. When it's coming to where do they putting their cloud documents, something one would think is important, they're just dumping them all into Google and Dropbox. And from a security perspective, I'm sure, you know, they're secure there, but from all of the, when you hang out with these various solutions that are legal based, you know, there's a bunch of bells and whistles that are very useful to a lawyer for how it manages your documents and how you can draw data from them to populate other tasks you're doing. And so it was really interesting to me how it seems like, with the exception of the stuff where people really know they need something legal, like billing, docketing, things like that, they're kind of oblivious to the fact that there are legal solutions kind of built for this industry out there, which I thought was unfortunate development and a sign that we have more to do.
Yeah, and I thought the other interesting one was, Niki, you already mentioned this, but this whole idea that, you know, when you ask lawyers about whether they're kind of tracking this consolidation in the industry and some of these just broader industry trends, that you know, basically they're just not paying attention at all to that, which tells me that you know, they're probably not following a lot of the stories that we consider to be significant stories to be following. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
but
been, you know,
you know
I
what
think
though,
that's
because like,
such a, but
sorry.
go ahead.
No, but that's the thing, because that kind of, because Niki and I will, because Niki's writing a year in review column for us that she'll be that we'll be publishing you know, obviously before the end of the year. And so and she's done this for us, I think 3 or 4 times now, I think, or maybe 3 times or whatever. And so typically I'll you know, like we'll talk about like some things that we think are worth, you know, putting on the list of like the top stories and whatnot. And I feel like every year it's always, hey, it was another banner year for M&A in the legal tech realm, and it's just like, you know, after a while, it just kind of, I think all the deals kind of meld together after a while. And, you know, if every year is like a big year, then it's kind of like, all right, well, were those years really big, or was it just, you know, business as usual kind of thing? So I was thinking about that just now, like just when I was reading, I was just like, oh, it was another big year for M&A. It's like, okay, but was it really compared to other years, or was it just because this is just what we track and what we look at and what, you know, what we talk about? So yeah, I mean, I could definitely see, like, for a lot of people, like, especially if they don't follow it, or as long as their programs just run correctly and you know, it doesn't affect them so much, they probably don't even pay attention.
Yeah, so I guess one question in my mind is whether they should be paying attention. I mean, we talk a lot about the duty of tech competence, and or even just, you know, when you look at some of the ethics opinions on using cloud software or whatever, the point that often gets made in these ethics opinions is that lawyers have a duty to, you know, kind of vet the providers that they're using and have some awareness of how stable are the companies they're using, and you know, how strong is their business? I mean, is their data likely to disappear tomorrow when the company declares bankruptcy and goes out of business? So knowing that you're, you know, knowing who owns your practice management company, or that your practice management company just got sold to some other investment group or something, seems to be something they should be tracking, or at least thinking, at least paying attention to, not tracking it closely. But I mean, this survey made it sound like a lot of them are just unaware of it, not even bored with it, just unaware of it. So obviously you all agree.
Hey, Bob, were you the only legal tech journalist that I just can't get over that.
Steve, I'm going to have to just kick you off this
Yeah.
podcast. It's like, I'm going to be the new,
You're going to be like, I'm going to ban me from the round table.
people who say things I don't like, I'm just kicking them off the podcast. Go
The new
start your
Elon
own.
Musk of legal tech.
You're gonna be the, I heard somebody on the radio that referred to him this morning as QAnon. I like that. I hadn't heard that before. Did I just commit libel or something? Probably not.
You're going to get kicked off Twitter.
All of a sudden, the
But it's true.
podcast shuts off. We lose our.
Not if it's true.
I think it was doxing is what you did.
All right. Well. Speaking of despicable characters, Victor, you've got a
What?
story involving one of our. Not Steve. No.
Wow, thank you for that intro. I don't know if that was
Not you. No. That was not a good transition, was it?
well, no. I mean, okay. Well,
Despicable
allegedly,
billionaires. How about if I put
yes,
it that way?
allegedly, he is a despicable character, and I guess this should be a lesson to all of us, and everyone, who's possibly out there thinking about investing in crypto. It's like you probably shouldn't invest in a cryptocurrency run by a guy who looks like, he could have been like Seth Rogen's stunt double, or Jonah Hill's stunt double in one of those like 21 Jump Street type movies. So yeah, I mean, it seems like this is really just kind of, happened very quickly. I mean, I thought that there were a couple of things that dealt with FTX and the fallout from the failure that came out this week. So the one that I sent it to was just talking about, the founder facing civil and criminal charges for the alleged $1.8 billion fraud. And then there was another story that came out as well, where I think he's accusing his lawyers at Sullivan and Cromwell of pressuring him to file for bankruptcy. So there's gonna be a lot of work for lawyers, these next couple of years. Thanks to this guy. Hopefully they don't take payment in FTX in FTX coin, or whatever the currency was. But it's just, I don't know. It's just it kind of, and funnily enough, the I think the personal lives might be different for you guys. But when I load the story off the ABA Journal story onto my website, onto my web browser, because I browse for coins a lot, just so I'm a coin collector. I actually have a coin commercial for it right underneath the story. So I don't know if that's subtle or not, that we should be investing in hard currency instead of crypto. But it just kind of begs the question. It's sort of like, I mean with crypto, it's just there's so much fraud out there. There's so many bad actors out there, and so many people who don't have what they claim to, but yet people are investing, and people are putting money into it, and it just I guess it's more of a buyer beware kind of thing. If you're gonna invest in this site, you better make sure you're on solid ground. You better be ready to ride the ups and downs, and hopefully you don't get taken for a ride like a lot of these investors did. And I mean, for the skeptic in me, like this is why I never invested in it in any kind of crypto, just because to me it's just kind of one step up from like a Ponzi scheme. But I know other people, adherents of it would disagree with me and correct me on my thoughts about it. But it's just, when things like that happen, it just kind of it always kind of puts a little bit of fear into me. It's sort of like, okay, what if a financial institution that I'm invested in was invested with them, or invested in someone that was invested with them, and then the whole like kind of thing just kind of snowballs down. So it'll be interesting to see where it turns out, like to see how this happens. I mean, obviously I think this guy's will probably be in prison, but you never know. And it'll be interesting to see how it goes, and if we'll get any kind of meaningful reform out of this.
Well, yeah, that's the thing that scares me, that it's going to end up being like the mortgage crisis of the 2020s, that actually lots of big institutions are tied to this mess. I hope not.
I saw a New York Times interview of the guy, and he wants everybody to know that he's really, really sorry. I mean, really sorry.
So sorry that he had a signal channel called wire fraud. I'm like, what?
Really, really sorry.
Yeah.
But isn't this one of those stories where it's kind of not fully accurate to sort of position it as just a story about why we shouldn't have invested in crypto or something? Because I mean, this guy was committing fraud. I mean, this guy was moving investors' money from their crypto accounts into his hedge fund without them knowing it. I mean, this was not this was just outright fraud. I mean,
and I've heard some parallels to Elizabeth Holmes too, that it was the level of bold-faced lying was just extraordinary.
Yeah. I mean, look, he's definitely did stuff above and beyond just be a crypto person. But if you're tracking, which I've been kind of, not necessarily for my job, but out of personal interest, I find it funny. I've been tracking all of the interviews that Binance has been giving over the last day or two, and it seems as though whatever we think of SBF going over the top, it seems like all of these organizations are equally compromised. Binance seems to be in all these interviews saying that they have they aren't really able to prove to you that they have the money that you invested with them or could cover their debts if they wanted to. All of that is a little scary. I actually responded to earlier this week that they went out and froze withdrawals, saying like, nobody can take money out right now. No problem, we're fine, but nobody can withdraw their money, which is never good. And I responded to it with just a picture of the bank run from It's a Wonderful Life because, it's the season. And it's just like all of these crypto people are like, well, you can't take your money out of here. Your money's in Tim's money laundering scheme and Sally's Ponzi. Like it's all in real trouble, I think.
But
It's like the
can
Hotel
anybody
California.
trace how many real institutions have invested in it and how much vulnerability there is in, like Goldman or Citi? I mean,
Yeah. I mean,
that's where
we know. Yeah, we know they're in. We don't know how. Well, I don't know as though we know how much. I'd like to think, and maybe I'm crazy. I would like to think that those institutions are not particularly deep into it, and that they're way deeper in other kinds of more stable things. But
they did buy
see.
those mortgages.
Yeah,
they sure did.
Yeah,
They sure did.
I'll say, I mean, relying on banks to be prudent about, how they gamble their money hasn't
Yeah.
ever really worked out for us as
It's fair. I just feel like crypto has always been, as a concept, very anti-bank. It's always said like the banks are out to get you. We're like outside of that. So I almost felt like they set themselves up culturally to be insulting of the banks, which I thought might work in our benefit. We'll see. It's real. It's been real fun. I mean, personally, all my money is in Donald Trump NFTs because that's
I was wondering when you were going to bring that up, because how could that not be a parody? How could that not be a
He
joke?
sold out of
Commercials
his
or
cards
something
though. I
else.
mean, people bought them. I mean, say what you will, but people bought them.
They did. I almost bought one. I really thought about it yesterday because I was like, this is stupid. I don't want to give this guy any money. But whereas the rest of the NFT market has fallen off a cliff because people have already gone through the stage of realizing it's stupid, his people probably never went through that. So I was like, we could do this. I could run this whole scam back. And it appears, I was just reading, that they've all sold out, the $99 whatevers. The cheapest one that's on the market right now is $250, so it's already more than doubled in value. And there's a few up. The rare ones are up for 24 grand right now. $99 yesterday is 24 grand today. So, it's something that we all learned has no value with the Bored Ape situation, but I don't think his viewers understand that.
One of the speakers at this TLTF summit was Kathy Wood, the sort of prominent investor with the ARK fund, and she is super bullish on crypto, as she made very clear in her talk at this conference. And I was just looking at the news, and she just bought another $12 million in Coinbase stock yesterday. So she thinks if you're in it for the long haul, crypto is the way to go. And actually, it just occurred to me regarding the TLTF summit, just to give a shout out to Dan O'Day, because I saw that he's in the audience today, and his company ECFX was one of the 4 startups there that pitched, that made it to that were selected as the kind of the final 4 to pitch on the main stage to the investment group. So congratulations to Dan on that.
Just had to close with that, right, Bob? You had to close with a.
I'm not closing because we haven't done Steve's story yet.
Oh, okay, good.
Oh, I thought he was banned.
Or Joe's.
And I want to hear the Pacer story.
Oh, I thought
know.
Joe's. Oh, that's right. I forgot about Joe's. I was thinking
Yeah,
of Joe's as the comment on Niki's story.
Well,
All right. We'll go from Alaska to Pacer. Actually, if we're talking about Dan, we should do Pacer because Dan's a Pacer guy. But we'll do Steve's and go to Joe's.
No, I was going to say when I read Joe's story on the Pacer, I envisioned him, like the old 60 Minutes reporters with the microphones. You care to comment on? No, but go ahead, Joe. I thought it was a pretty cool story. So probably more interesting than mine.
I mean, it's not a particularly huge deal. It's something we've talked about on this show before. I mean, several years ago, the administrative office of the U.S. courts tried to argue when Congress said, "Hey, maybe Pacer, shouldn't be charging people an arm and a leg to get what should be public documents." The administrative office was like, "Oh, it would cost us $2 billion to let that be free," which seemed ridiculous because it was ridiculous. And then time went on, and they started saying it was not $2 billion, but it was $100 million a year. And then time went on, and now we finally got over the hump where people stopped listening to them in Congress, and we got it in a bill, and it got scored by the CBO, and the CBO comes back and says, actually, it's going to end up saving the government $14 million a year because the way it's structured, it's going to charge big commercial downloaders, your Westlaw, Lexus kind of folks, basically, are going to get charged fees for that, whereas everyone else isn't. It works out that when you play it all out, they're going to end up shouldering enough more of the burden of downloads every year that it's going to end up saving the government money. So, of course, after $2 billion has floated around, making Pacer open to people is going to save us money, which is exactly why a couple weeks ago I told you they're going to start trying to charge more for transcripts, and this is going to be how they get you. Not that people, as we discussed then, not that court reporters don't deserve more money, but these new, we're going to charge people more for transcripts is just going to be the new slush fund. That's my prediction. They've been drummed out of Pacer. Here's going to be about transcripts now.
So, Joe, I'm just curious. So, I think one of the earlier proposals was that it would only be free for the public, but it would not be free for lawyers or law firms. Is your understanding that it would be that the documents would be free for lawyers and law firms now?
It's about it has to do with how much you're downloading, basically. So yeah, Scadden is going to almost certainly cross over the threshold. If you're a local firm who does a few federal cases a year, you probably aren't, I would think. I don't think it makes a distinction based on you being a lawyer, your status, as much as it does on how much you're doing. It is my understanding.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know how they would be able to check that, like, because you could always say, "Oh, I'm downloading it for my personal use."
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I think it's just like, oh, I got, you cross a certain threshold, and then it's like, oh, well, now you've strained our system enough.
yeah, I don't. So they're not going to raise prices on they're not going to raise the document price or the page price. They're just going to have a threshold where if you take so many documents. Obviously, I'm concerned about those costs because they are not insignificant in a law firm.
Yeah.
Even now, even at the low price they have now, it adds up.
It's quite a swing in between what it would cost and what it would save.
Yeah. Maybe we need math classes for Congress.
Well, this was the courts. Congress always kind of knew this wasn't going to cost that much. It was the federal courts saying $2 billion.
Yeah.
Well,
we became lawyers, but we became lawyers because we couldn't do math. I guess the same is true for judges, right?
I was told there would be no math for anyone old enough for that reference. Yeah.
But isn't that the point of companies like ECFX and Pacer Pro and others that are helping you on those costs and helping you at least helping control those costs and manage those costs, not just by eliminating duplicative downloads, but also by creating caches of the already download documents so you can go in and access them for free. Or the Free Law Project too does that through its recap project. So there are ways to get Pacer documents without paying for them.
Yeah.
Every time you keep saying it's $2 billion, Joe, I keep thinking of like Dr. Evil, like they're, just sitting there just randomly coming up with these big numbers and like $2 billion. Like
That's exactly what I was picturing too. Yeah.
I just want filings with frickin' lasers on them. Yeah, 2 billion. Unbelievable.
All right, well, now we can go to frigid Alaska just to make me feel a little bit warmer here on this chilly day in New England.
I'm really sorry, Bob, I offended you. Now that I'm at the very end, realize that
I am
really
unoffendable.
So, no, real quick, I just sort of picked up on this. I thought it was a kind of an interesting development. The Alaska court system has approved allowing those that work for the Alaska Legal Services Corporation or who volunteer to work with it, who are not lawyers, to perform certain legally related functions, limited sort of advocacy and filings and those kinds of things, provided that they undergo some substantive training with the Legal Services Corporation and some ethical training, and provided that they get the requisite approval from the governing bodies. That will limit, of course, what they do. And I'm not, there's kind of a lot of ins and outs and all that, but the thing that sort of was interesting to me is that, for all these state bar associations and state courts that have contemplated these big sort of steps, let's open up ownership, or let's let people who aren't lawyers serve everybody and charge and all this stuff, and they argue and contemplate their navels for years and never do anything. And so here's Alaska sort of taking this kind of small step of letting people who aren't lawyers actually do something only for those people who have limited financial means and who wouldn't otherwise get service. And it just struck me that so let's actually accomplish something. It may not be the most biggest thing ever to help access to justice, but it's something, and it's something that is hard for all the sort of biased interest groups to come in and oppose. I mean, you can't come in and say, "Oh, this is going to open up law firms to ownership by accounting firms," and "Oh, this is going to let paralegals charge, for legal services." I mean, no. I mean, it's very limited. People that really need help can now get more help that they wouldn't otherwise get by allowing people who aren't lawyers to do things. And we all know that, I mean, there's a lot of things in litigation and administrative law that you don't have to have a law degree to do. You just have to understand how the system works. And so I just thought it was kind of a cool step and in the right direction. And maybe it'll result in other state courts kind of stepping back and saying, let's see what we can actually accomplish and do, as opposed to argue about for years and never do anything. So north to Alaska.
Yeah, and I thought it's interesting. It is a sort of a light move in a sense. I mean, it's something that they were able to do fairly simply, and unlike like the limited license legal technician program that was launched in Washington State a number of years ago and then crashed and burned. Part of the reason that crashed and burned is because they built such a heavy bureaucratic and administrative structure around it. And this looks nice and simple and direct and something that can be sustained over a period of time and actually do some good. So good for Alaska.
Yep, that's the way I saw it too.
All right, our time is up, and is people around next? Like, do we want to meet next week? It's like the day before Christmas Eve or something.
Yeah, I mean it's day before Christmas Eve. Yes, Eve.
Yeah, Christmas Eve.
Yeah. Whatever. I'm here. I don't know. I got nowhere to be.
So I won't be around.
You won't be around.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we could check it out by email and see who's around. We should do it. We should do like an end of year story, like our top stories of the year or something for a show. Maybe next week if people are around. If not, whenever we are next around.
Cool.
All right. Until then, thanks to everybody for participating. See you all next time.
Bye.
Good to see everyone. Bye.